So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our Monday night shiur. And for those who are watching online tonight, we have a special guest. We have a special treat for you all with Moshe Goodman. We have our expert Shatnes tester in the house. So I'm sure this is going to be a fascinating and interesting shiur. Title: Cain and Abel, a Shatnes story. I know Rabbi Goodman has written lots of books available in any good Shatnes retail store, I presume? No? You can get them online?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're really designed just for Shatnes testers.
Oh, they're just for Shatnes testers, right. Okay, so you can't buy his books unless you become a Shatnes tester.
However,
but without any further ado, I give you Moshe Goodman.
Thank you. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about Shatnes. I'll get into what Shatnes is in a few moments, but as advertised, I'm going to tell you the very first Shatnes story, which is about Cain and Abel. But before I do that, I just want to give a little bit of introduction to understand just mitzvahs in general. As we know, there are basically two categories of mitzvahs, mishpatim and chukim. Mishpatim are things that we clearly understand, like you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't kill. The reasons for that are understood to us. And then there are chukim, in which there are no, we don't know the reasons for them. Shatnes happens to be one of them. So we have, and kashrus happens to be another chok. We don't really know the reason why we keep certain parts of kashrus. But we make up all kinds of reasons, like pork. I'm sure you've heard all kinds of reasons why we don't eat pork. Same thing with Shatnes. So the first Shatnes story is jealousy, a tale of two brothers, of Cain and Abel. And that's discussed in Bereshis, in chapter 4 of Bereshis. And Cain brought sacrifices to Hashem that were from plants. And Abel brought, after he saw his brother doing that, he brought sacrifices from the flock. So it's told that the sacrifices of Cain were accepted, and those of Hevel were accepted, and those of Cain were not. Okay, then what happened? The two brothers, Cain became very jealous of his brother because his sacrifices weren't accepted, even though they weren't of quite as good a nature. And then what happens, I think we know that he then killed his brother. And the Medrash has an interesting commentary on why this was, as you might can guess. The Cain sacrifices were from the crops, and the Medrash over there explains that was from pishtim. Now, pishtim is flax. I'll talk a bit about flax. You have something, like you have a sheep. From sheep comes wool. From a flax plant comes linen. Okay, the linen that's used for making the fiber. Okay, and it said over there that the sheep that were the flock that were being brought, and because because of these two mixtures, right, of the plant being the linen, let's say, and the sheep, because of that, the two brothers not getting along, that was one of the reasons that we do not mix wool and linen together.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There are many others. So just to continue on what I was saying, with flax, okay, the flax plant grows about maybe 4.5 feet tall. It grows in a single stalk. I have some stalk material here. You can see pieces of the stalk. You can pull it out and touch it. Let me just keep one piece. Sorry, we need to pull it back there. I'm just going to take this one.
But flax are one you can use, no?
You can always use flax, and you can also use wool, but you can't use them together. So it grows very long, and it's beautiful, has a beautiful blue flower which closes up at night and opens up during the day. So if you ever have a chance to see it, it's kind of interesting seeing the plant. Where they grow?
For the most part.
Because it's labor intensive, okay, growing linen. We stopped growing it in the United States in the 1950s.
But it does grow.
It used to grow here because the plant, didn't bring any with me, but you pull it out from the ground because about 10 to 20% of it is in the root, okay? And what happens is that if you don't physically pull it out, you lose that percentage of your crop. And I'm going to try to do this. Maybe everybody can kind of see this. It's called a bass fiber. A bass fiber means the fiber grows on the outside of the plant. And if I snap this right, this didn't snap very well, but because this is, you can see here, you can see little pieces that are on the outside. You may be able to see better in the, that there's these long fibers that are on the outside of the plant. You can pass that around. Okay.
And that's the flax?
Yes.
Oh, it feels very strong.
It's on the outside. There are many bass fibers.
Cotton.
Cotton's not a bass fiber.
It's inside the pod. They got to
No,
separate.
it's not a bass fiber though. The fiber does not grow on the outside
No,
of the plant.
they got to open it up. That's what had the cotton gin.
So even one thread of linen that's found in a wool garment, or a wool thread in a linen garment, would be shatnes. So the mixture of wool and linen. We're going to talk about this in a few seconds, but I'd just like to mention one thing before I really get into it. This is important because I have been a shatnes tester for over 25 years.
How'd you get into that racket?
I was a scientist. My background's in science, so it's not a racket. But
I know, I'm just kidding, being frivolous.
And so now I don't run a lab. The last I had some surgery 4 years ago on my neck. I'm kind of out of the business now. You can just set it there. And now I do shatnes training. I train people to test for shatnes, and I work with various shatnes shiurs as well. So the main thing I want just to get a point across, because many people have this misconception, shatnes is applicable for men, women, and children. Many people think it doesn't apply to women. Many people think it does not apply to children. So all three of those, basically all Yidden, you have this prohibition of shatnes.
How about the sheep?
Okay, now we're going to talk about the Torah prohibition. There's two psukim in the Torah. The first one I would talk about is from Devorim. It says, "Lo tilba shatnes semer upishtim yachto." You should not wear shatnes, which is wool and linen, together. So this prohibition is on wearing of shatnes. And shatnes is not a Hebrew word. We don't know really where the origin comes from. There are many interpretations of it. The most common is that it comes from a combination of three words: shua, tavi, and nuz, which means, okay, when you have fibers. Let's say here's wool. You can pass this around so you'll see this. So the wool this is raw wool. What you have to do is you have to straighten all the fibers out, right? You have to get them so they're all in the same direction. And this is, so to do that would be the combing of the wool. Or linen. You have to comb a linen as well. It's a different kind of process of doing it. Yes?
Can a sheep be in the field with flax?
Yes.
Why not?
Absolutely.
Enjoy itself.
Yeah.
I'm not.
It has to be combined
Normal.
together in a way that is permanent of sorts. I don't want to get into all the
No.
but
That's very
basically
good,
they
though.
combined together. Okay.
I wasn't trying to ask
No, I
be a
understand.
wise guy.
And so you have to do combing, and then what you do is you do spinning. You have to spin it into a thread. Okay. That's tavi, and nuz would be actually weaving of it. Where you have a shesi and an Arab, a warp and a woof, that go in I don't have
Different
a picture of it, I'm
directions.
sorry. I didn't bring everything with me, but so all three of those are needed to make would be Shatnes d'Oraisa, right, from the Torah prohibition, okay? And it's only lamb's wool that comes from a lamb, not from any other animal. We know that from a Gemara Yerushalmi and Klaim. And we also know, and it's nothing else but the linen. So only the combination of those two. The second mitzvah, unlike many other mitzvahs, they only have one mention of it in the Torah, but for Shatnes it's mentioned twice. The other is Beged Kloyim. It means a garment that has this mixture of Kloyim Shatnes. It actually says Lo Ya'al Lecha. What does that mean? Okay, this would prohibit a garment or some other mixture of wool and linen coming upon you. So that might include things like blankets, pillows, oven mitts, bath towels. I'm just giving you some examples, not that we find Shatnes in all those. And it's very interesting, there are two items that are mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch that I don't think, used the way they're mentioned there. Well, maybe one of them. Tablecloths is interesting because you're not allowed to have hana, pleasure, enjoyment from Shatnes. So tablecloths is a problem because people, not anybody here, but if you go to the kids, they might rub their hands on that tablecloth. They would get used to something as a tablecloth made of Shatnes, that would be prohibited. Curtains is another interesting one. Why do you have curtains? Because it was in the old times, right, that people who were servants, Jewish servants who were in a big house or mansion or whatever, would need to get warm, so they wrap themselves up in the curtains. So I don't know if those are applicable anymore. We could discuss it later.
Not with the cost of curtains, I guarantee you.
Right.
But it's
So-
polyester.
Yeah, so that's true. But back then, that the wool and linen was pretty much all you had. So
Natural
He
fiber.
had cotton,
so then you have
silk.
the thing is now most Shatnes today is not from the Torah. It's not a deraisa. Okay, it's not shua tavinus. It's not combed, spun, woven together. Okay, the main prohibition is the rabbanan. Okay, from the rabbis, and that would include any wool and linen that are combined, and they could be spun together, woven together, combed together. Combing. Any one of those without any of the others. Or in many cases where anything of wool is attached to something of linen would be prohibited from the Rabban garment. Yeah. Okay, so just a couple of things just to add to what the rabbi's been talking about on Shabbos, moksa. Right, in case you don't know, Shatnes, to use it on Shabbos would be moksa. You can add that to your shiur. And there's prohibition of actually selling garments. Okay, if you have a garment that's Shatnes, you go to the store and you find a garment that's Shatnes, and you want to sell it, there's some requirements of who you could sell it to. You can't sell it to another Jew. And might not even be able to sell it within the community if another Jew might purchase it.
But then you're getting a benefit from it.
That's right. So you're not, no, some other Jew might have. You're allowed to sell it. It's only an Isser Hana for you. The money is not a problem. You can sell it. Okay?
Anything to make a buck.
Anything to make a buck. Okay. I didn't know that was a halacha, but okay.
It is. That's the new one.
Okay. The next thing I just want to talk about is trying on garments. Garments, what happens if you go to the store and you go to buy a suit or something like that, you don't know whether that garment, right, has Shatnes in it necessarily or not. So I assume most of the people in here are Ashkenazi. Do we have any Sephardim? Okay, by Sephardim, it's a much bigger problem. Okay, because the Rambam is very, very stringent on it. He would not allow you to try on a garment that might contain shatnez. Jews who are Ashkenazic Jews can try it on, not usually in a store of in itself. It has to be like in a dressing room where nobody else would see it. We're not getting hana from the garment, not getting any benefit from the garment, right? So it's much bigger problem for Sephardim. What I recommend people do is that if you find a nice black suit in the store you think you want to buy, try on the blue one, that you're not going to buy, or a green one, because that one you're not purchasing, so you're not getting any benefit from it, and then purchase the black one in that size. And bring it to your Shatnes checker, and you can take a look at it. There are other, yes?
Are there any particular manufacturers that do this wantonly, routinely, and all the time? Like, is it Givenchy, Yves Saint Laurent? I mean, which guys do these suits that we should avoid?
Any suits, I would say, that are over about $400, $500, probably have shatnez in them. A good percentage of time will have shatnez in them.
How do you know?
Okay, you don't know. See, that's why you have to get it tested. But to give you some names, Canali, Brooks Brothers, some of them, Joseph Banks, some of their more expensive suits have shatnez. What?
I buy Jewish suits from Lipschitz.
Bart Schaffner and Marks, very rarely today.
Right.
Hickey Freeman, yes.
Yeah.
So they mentioned Canali. Canali's a big one. A lot of them. Hugo Boss, just to mention a few. Okay, the list goes on and on and on and on.
What about the English?
Silk does not apply.
Can't do this at all. The shine. Okay.
Okay, silk and wool might be a problem just because the silk looks like linen, and there's more a sign issue. But I don't think the halacha today is, the Rov Poskim would say that's not an issue. It's actually a Mishnah in the 9th parak of Koloim.
Hardy's the English? No?
I don't know. I don't know that.
You don't know from Hardy Amy's?
No, sorry.
So that's
and each community is different. You'll find that what you might find here in Florida, the garments and whatnot that are sold here, even some of the top brands, are not always the same thing you're going to get in New York or in New Jersey and whatnot. You don't get always the same stuff all across the United States. So, okay. Okay, so now what if you have wool and linen garments which are separate? Okay, for example, let's say you had a linen shirt on and then you put a wool jacket on. So it's an interesting question because many poskim say you cannot take off the shirt without taking off the jacket, so it's considered yachtav. It's considered attached in a lot of ways. But so there are poskim that are lenient, and there's some that are more stringent. Most poskim are lenient in such a case. For example, if you have wool pants and a linen shirt, everybody says that particular thing is that having that is mutter.
Thank you.
So I have just a few tips on purchasing garments. Read the label. The labels are not always accurate, but read the label.
100%.
Now, the label will only cover the material on the very outside of the suit, okay? It does not contain, if you read the label, it does not contain anything inside the suit at all.
It used to.
Never.
No, the lining.
Never.
No,
Since the 1930s when they set up these
You're
laws.
wrong.
No, I'm not wrong about it. Okay, we can take that off. I happen to know the laws. I deal with a lot of people who work in this business. Okay, now it only covers what is on the outside of the material. It doesn't tell you whether you have linen in your collar. It doesn't tell you if you have polyester someplace else, or if you have tapes and things like that. I'll kind of show you a little bit of those things tonight. It does not cover any of that. So labels are not always correct, but there's some emes to them, okay? So always read the label, because if it says wool, then you probably have a problem. Also, if anything has like other fibers in it, that's also could be something that can be a problem. Reprocessed materials can sometimes be problematic. Reprocessed materials. You see that this is like a reprocessed material. Okay. Here you have the little pieces that are in there are not a problem, because they're not considered to be a hood, a thread. Okay. If you have fibers, you do not have a shatnes problem if they're mixed with other fibers. They have to go beyond that, unless they are felted. According to the Rambam, they have to. If they were felted, then that would be, according to him, shatnes d'oraisa, the shatnes from the Torah. But
What do you mean felted?
like a hat. A hat is felted material.
Pressed.
Pressed,
right?
Stained
Okay.
and pressed together. That's what felted is. So things with appliques on them can also be problems. One of the things I just want to also tell people is that tailors cannot be relied upon to test for shatnes. Okay, they do not necessarily know all the ins and outs of where to check, or they cannot identify materials. So, okay, I'm going to just go through a few things that I recommend getting tested. It's not that we found shatnes in just about all kinds of clothing, but the main things I would say are suits for both men and women, pants, women's jackets and suits, skirts, sweaters, coats, especially winter coats. I don't think people have them here, but
With interlinings. With interlinings. The coats with the interlinings.
Sometimes even not, because coats are most wool overcoats are problematic because they have a lot of recycled, reprocessed materials in them. So okay.
They used to make shoulder pads like that.
Then I thought I would just tell a little story, and then we'll get on to the questions, and I'm going to show many examples here. I have a story I like to tell about who had the first shatnes laboratory. So it turns out in the 9th parak of Yerushalmi in Klayim, it talks about Hillel ben Wallace, not sure exactly who, that's his name, Hillel ben Wallace. He brought a garment to Rebbe, who was worth over 300,000 dinar. Now you note that, whenever we have these like 300,000, 300, it's a guzma, usually an exaggeration. But it was an expensive garment, and Rebbe found that it contained shatnes, and Rebbe, instead of like remediating it or whatever, we don't know the whole story there because it's cryptic, he immediately burnt the entire garment. So I recommend not going to such shatnes testers. This is the first mention of it that I know of. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
How do you test for this?
I'm going to go through how I test.
Yeah, that was
Okay, and what things I find. So okay, I sent around some wool.
Here, you want it back?
Let me.
Free at last.
Okay, here's some nice. This is merino wool.
Yeah.
This is the finest wool you can get.
From the underside of the sheep, no?
The underside of the sheep, interestingly, has something that's used. It's does anybody know what it is that comes from the underside of the sheep?
The abdomen section there.
What? What'd you say?
He said an other.
Well, there could be those, but something we use.
Abdominal section.
Lanolin comes from the underside of the sheep.
Which?
Lanolin.
Vinyl. Oh yes, for the skin. Yes.
Okay, so
That was pure wool.
so where do we find shatnes in most suits? We find them in the collar. Now, how do we actually find that it's linen? Okay, we basically, the two main techniques that we use, there are others, but the main ones that we use is to theocyan. Okay, does anybody know what theocyan is?
Yeah, you can
Everybody know what theocyan
Where
is?
you recognize what it looks like.
That's right.
Look at it.
You look at it. Expert eyes. And expert eyes
Guys see it
takes
over there?
sometimes months and months and months to get really good at having expert eyes. The other way we identify it is by just using a microscope. So I have an interesting story. This is kind of like.
So how does linen look different to any other fiber?
Okay, I'm going to talk about that in a
Oh,
second.
every fiber's there.
But let me get through. Let me get through where I check in a garment, and then we'll discuss that. So I just want to tell a little story about in 1650, Rabbi Moshe Goodman, who was
Same
he
difference.
assembled all the tailors in the town, and he showed them a whole big range of different materials, and he asked them to determine which of them were linen. I don't know how many tailors were there and how many garments he sent around, or
Building in
whatever.
Lithuania, no?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
And as it turns out, that of everybody there, nobody was able to identify the linen from all the garments that he had. That was in 1650. The techniques are much better now, so we can, maybe even tailors can do that, but it takes a long time to become a Shatnes customer. Okay, so where do we mostly find Shatnes? Okay, we find it in collars. Okay,
It's different.
mostly in men's suits, but also in women's suits. So this is a collar, came off the suit like this, is the back part of it.
Inside,
On the,
underside.
it's the underside of the suit.
It's different.
It's right here, that's right. Comes from right in here. We would cut inside here. And on this suit here, you can see very clearly that this suit contains Shatnes.
Because they've cut it out, you mean?
Well, I identified it, so I just wanted to show
Oh.
what Shatnes looks like. When you pull it out, it'll look something like this. This is all linen. Okay, this has got a felt with linen on it. Okay, this is a really special one. This is a Hugo Boss. Tricky guys. They make something called a sandwich collar. If you look here, if you can point this out as you pass this along, you see here's the felt on both sides, but you see here, this whole piece here is linen that's in between the two pieces of felting.
Hidden.
Where else do we find in suits? We find sometimes in the material. We'll find that the material will contain wool and linen, or a combination of other materials as well. We also check into things like this suit. You know, you have to open the suit.
There goes the suit.
Go.
I could have given it one.
And here, just show you. Many times.
Oh, behind the lapels.
Okay.
Yes, that's why all my jackets also have holes on the bottom. Because the Shatnes testers have been going through.
This site has not been completely opened. I apologize. Anyhow, so I don't have a knife on me, but
You need a knife? I got a knife. You want a knife?
no, I got plenty in the back there.
I got a
I
knife
just
if you need it.
want to show you that you have the shoulder pads inside the shoulder pad area. Sometimes in here,
In the shoulder.
I'll pull this out, show you the shoulder pad in just a second here. Inside the shoulder pad, you can find, this is not behaving well. I'm gonna have to cut this open. This is not gonna work well, sorry. Okay, this is the only suit I brought with me. Okay. The shoulder pad's up in here. This is very hard in this garment. But anyhow, inside here, okay, You have to take my word there's a shoulder pad, but also, I have to cut this open later. Also around this seam here, there's a tape. The tape is a little band of material that's put in there so that it doesn't come apart, right? It keeps the suit together. Many times when people would have, the suit wouldn't fit exactly right, the tailor would just put his knee in here and kind of spread it out and wouldn't split the suit apart. Where else do we find shatnez? We find it many times inside the pocket stays in here, inside here.
Behind the lapel.
Yeah, not very rarely in the lapel. You know what we find in the lapel today is in a like a conductor's kind of tails. You'll find it in there. So also sometimes these pocket materials here. This pocket material sometimes is made out of. This one's synthetic, but this pocket material right here could contain linen. Also, there are reinforcements in the garment, in places like up in here where the material, where the suit comes together. There's a taper in the suit, right here in the garment. Right here at this taper, many times there's a little piece behind here. You see how there's a little piece here, and that little piece is used for a reinforcement.
There's a dark side.
Yes. Also in the back. So, and also we let's see if I can do this real quickly. I guess I didn't realize this suit wasn't open. I apologize. Just grabbed it when I was coming down. But here you'll see the back side of the shoulder pad, which we also check. Here is the back side. You have a shoulder pad that fits in, and most of it sits up here, and the back side comes through the collar. So you can see back here, here's the back side of the shoulder pad coming through in the sleeve. And I don't know about in this one, but many times in here will be a tape.
And that tape is linen?
Sometimes it can be linen. So there's probably a tape in here, but I need a...
Well, there's padding also.
So
The padding, it mostly is...
Cotton.
It's used more in better suits
It's
or cheaper
cotton.
crummy suits?
or it's synthetic. I don't see a tape in
They
here.
use it more.
They don't always have a tape.
Is it used more in better suits or in cheaper crummy suits?
Used in both.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I have a big problem.
Yeah,
What you've just showed us now you've done,
yeah.
is that how you test?
That was my question
I had to
too.
pull it apart. I didn't have a
No, I
If you
realize
pull it
that.
apart,
Yes,
you pull it
basically, yes.
apart and it's
But-
okay. What do? Put it all
I
back
put it all
together?
back together and it looks nice.
I was gonna say,
You have
that's
to
an
stitch it.
expensive-
You should hand stitch it together.
That's what we want.
Wow.
Usually don't have
You might need a new
only
wardrobe.
So I guess,
Very-
But
I guess
didn't
he's a
have
good
knife up here, so I
seamstress.
just ripped it.
No, I understand, but it's a laborious
I've
process.
worked on $10,000 suits. Woo! I've never had a complaint.
What kind of suit is that?
You must be a real good
Anybody
sewer.
got any ketones? I'll be glad to tell.
Which one?
Ketones.
Was there shatnez in that suit?
Japanese?
Absolutely, 100%. I've only casted maybe a half a dozen,
They're
dozen
Japanese?
ketones. Every one of them had shatnez.
What was it?
Are you able to remove it without ruining the whole integrity of the suit?
Some ketones yes, and some ketones no. In most cases, you're going to find linen's going to be in here, and then what I do is I use a piece where this is felt, and this has a synthetic material in the back. I cut a replacement. You take it to the tailor, and they put it back in.
Wow.
But you don't do the physical
I
stitching.
do not. You wouldn't want me to.
Like, okay.
Well, it's a whole extra.
Not if you spend $10,000 on a suit.
let me-
Even a
I can
$1,000
bring-
suit.
Okay, so what time do we have till?
Whatever, I think it's going, people, it's very informative.
I
It's,
want to see if I can just show you. I want to know how to identify things. This is not the easiest thing to do, but one of the ways you can identify linen is it. Can you see that's twisting? Can you see that's twisting?
No, he wet it so.
I can see it's moving.
Right. Watch. Can you see it's twisting?
The physical
Oh, right.
characteristic of the
Okay.
material.
Everybody can take a piece of that and try it. You have to wet it,
Yeah,
and you got to get it to a small strand. And when you wet it, can you see that?
it twists.
Right, yeah, it's moving. It's
I'm not turning my hand. And you see how it's going to go back the other way a little bit?
Reactive.
So this is one of the ways you want to know ways to identify. This is called a twist test. As it turns out,
Is it a left twist or a right twist?
some things twist right, some twist left. Actually, it's Z and S. Okay. There's a whole.
Is it left?
This test was developed by a guy by the name of Herzog back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I think he wrote it up in the early 1900s. So let's see if I have a quick.
They were big in chemistry in Germany at that time, you know.
We'll try to see if I can find a quick picture of. Okay, so these are Z and S, and it's the way the fiber twists. You can see that actually it's a way of determining it. I don't want to really get it. It's a complicated microscopic technique. But you see here, if it's a Z twist, it'll twist hemp, jute, cotton, raffia, and sisal will twist one direction, and ramie and linen will twist the other. There are many others that are in the list, but the main ones we look at are ramie, linen, hemp, and jute, and not jute so much. Ramie is a material. Let's see if I brought some ramie with me.
Also plant.
Ramie is a material that is
Where does it grow?
China mostly. I do not seem to have any ramie with me, but ramie looks and feels exactly the same way as linen. It's very hard for many Shatnes testers to tell the difference. It turns out ramie physically twists. It has a twist in the fiber, like cotton.
And wool.
Right?
Wool has a twist.
Wool does not twist.
Sure it does.
It has a crimp, but it does not twist. The fiber does
Semantics.
not actually twist. What?
I said semantics.
No.
For me, it's semantics.
No, it's not semantics. Wool does not twist. It has no physical twist. Here's a twist. When the fiber goes and it goes like this,
Yeah.
that is a twist. Wool
No.
never has a twist. It has a crimp. It has a curve to it.
Yeah.
It has no
It's not twisted, but it
does not twist.
Can't twist again like I did last summer.
Right.
wow.
Rock and roll's here to stay. It'll never die. Chubby checkers.
Here's some linen. If anybody, one of the reasons you mentioned before, the reason we use linen is it's incredibly tough.
Stiffen.
What percentage of garments have Shatnes?
So that's a very good question. We don't have statistics because nobody's really kept that of what percent. I would say we're somewhere between 2 to 4% of garments, maybe, and it depends on where you purchase your garment. If you go to in Philadelphia, if you go to Boyd's, okay, which is our high-end store, probably 60% of the suits there are going to have Shatnes, right? Whereas you go to maybe, I don't know, Sims, they don't have Sims anymore.
No, he's out of business. He started a
Kohl's,
school
whatever
board,
it
he's
is,
out of business.
you're probably going to have a much smaller percent. But I would say maybe on average, maybe 2% of men's garments, suits have Shatnes. Something like that.
Stuff.
No.
I think this is what.
It's a men's shop.
Many, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Many of today's very expensive suits are silk,
Yeah.
but that doesn't apply, you can't, to Shatnes at all. You can mix anything with that?
You could, but you have to remember, right, that it doesn't go by the garment material. You could go buy a silk suit and it still could have shatnez. You could buy a polyester suit and it still could have shatnez.
Wow.
How about recycled
Because
merchandise?
I told you that the label is only going to be on the outside what the fabric is made out of.
So it won't be 100%
Sometimes
silk? Or?
you will have, okay, let me see if I can, if this one does not have one. You have what's called a front canvas pad in many suits. This one does not. It does, it's only a small piece of one here. Okay, there's a front canvas pad here in this suit, okay? Now, this is an unusual front canvas pad, but many of these, okay, front canvas pads are white. And in there, okay, it's made, it has a horsehair blend sometimes it has a wool blend in it. So in many suits, you always will have wool. Not always, but you have a high chance of having wool in it. So if you have, in the front canvas pad, if you have wool, and any place else in the suit, in a silk suit, for example, if there's a front canvas pad and it has wool, and let's say they still might put linen in the collar, you're gonna have a problem.
You have 3 materials there.
Yeah. And so in polyester suits, we still find shatnez.
Rabbi,
Yes.
how about recycled materials, which you see an awful lot of these days?
Yes. That one piece I sent around.
Here, this one?
Yeah. This is okay. This is a schmata piece. This is one type of reprocessed material, right? This is sent through like a mill. It's ground up, right? And then refelted back together. That's one type, right? This is not so much of a problem because we don't care about the little threads in there, okay? Unless they're threads of wool and linen. All the rest of this, if this was wool and linen, there's not really an issue. Only the chutim, the threads in here are a problem, okay? So in some of these you have problems of the threads in here. In some of these you'll have wool and linen threads, and that's a problem, okay? If it's just fibers, it's not an issue.
But when they, I don't know how they reprocess.
Okay, so let me get to the second thing. The second thing they do is they take all the old garments and they pull them all apart. Schmat, the guy takes them and they send them into a processing machine, and they take all the wool fibers, for example, and they pull them all apart, and then they take them and then make new yarn out of that, new thread out of that. That's very common, okay? But many times, even in those, you usually do not find shatnez. And the way you can always tell that is many times when you look at it under a microscope, you'll see maybe a blue and a red and a green and a black, and when they're all combined together, they look black. The thread will look, let's say, black. So when I see that in the microscope, I know that thread was reprocessed. Now, since 1933, I think, or 32, there is not enough wool sheep in the world, right, to make new garments. Since maybe the 1910, 1920, there are not enough sheep in the world to produce enough wool to make new garments. And that every garment should be new. It's impossible. It hasn't existed since the early 1900s. Okay, so the United States made laws. Okay, the main law was like 1932, 33. They had a couple different laws on what is reprocessed and how what's classified as reprocessed. Okay, now even in virgin wool suits where they have the label, it's not always virgin wool. It's supposed to be, but it isn't. So a lot of people will get this wool mark that I know that there's a 3 things. That's supposedly virgin wool, brand new wool that came off the sheep processed, right? No. But there's not enough wool in the world, right, to make suits for everybody.
So what is it?
It's a fact.
Wow.
Okay.
A shiur.
Yeah.
Question is this. Let's say you unwillingly buy one of these here suits and it's got shatnez and stuff, and you spent a lot of money, and what do? You give it in and you find the shatnez there. So can it be salvaged? Can you save it for the most part?
Many things can be salvaged because in the collar or in something else that can be removed. Okay, not always. If it can't be, then hopefully you saved your receipt and they'll take it back. Many stores have a 7-day policy, so quickly bring it to the end.
But after you take it off.
Wait a minute. If it's ripped apart and you inspected it and they'll take it back?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
That's the finest stores.
Many of them will.
Yeah?
Many of them will. I deal with a lot of stores that deal with Jewish customers, so they know all about it, so they don't give people a hard time.
Not Macy's.
I'll tell you a story that happened. Okay, I'm going to send this around just so people know. This is a piece that came out of a Studio Milano suit maybe 10 years ago. See in the belt loop, we didn't talk much about pants. Many times there's a piece in there. And this came out of a kid's suit. And here, this turns out that every 5th thread in here, or something like that, I don't remember, it's like polyester, and then linen. So it was a nace. Remember how you were talking about on Shabbos, how sometimes the Rabban Shalom gives you this? It was like a nace that I even found this, okay? That even though they're all yellow, some of them are polyester and some of them are linen. It's a Shatnes problem.
So how long does it take you on average to check a suit jacket?
I'm slow. I'm very slow. It takes me maybe 6 to 7 minutes.
Wow. Wow.
And you get paid to do it.
Nice job.
You get paid to do it.
Not anymore.
No, but when you were doing it
I
professionally.
never charge very much. Because I want people to do the mitzvah. This is a wool blend. See, girls, nice little dress.
Yeah.
Appliques sometimes will contain linen on them. So you have to be careful with appliques. That wasn't the problem here. As it turns out, behind the collar here in this is all linen.
Lipstick on the collar, told the tail on you.
Yeah.
Norman.
Let me just show. I've only brought a couple of more interesting things to show.
Yeah, we know. I know.
This was a little boy's cap. These pieces coming down the side are wool. Okay? And then you see here, in each one of these pieces going up, there's something called piping. Okay, and here's wool in the front here and a wool. And the piping in here, I just open this up so you can see it. Maybe you could show the next person. And you see this little piping that goes in there, that's all linen. 100% linen. Okay. Then I have...
You want to stop?
We still good on time?
Have a few minutes?
If anybody needs to leave, they're more than welcome. Now, this is the famous Shiloh Uggs.
Ugg boots.
Ugg boots. Okay?
Aussies.
Now, this is a very interesting thing. This is leather, right? This is leather.
Is it?
What's on the other side? This is the leather. What is this? This is wool, right? This is wool. If I put linen and sewed it right on here, is there a problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Of course.
There's no wool.
Why not?
It's not a wool.
It's wool.
But it's a sheepskin.
It's sheepskin. What's the problem? Why isn't it?
Because it's a sheep.
It's not a lamb?
It's fibers.
Oh.
Fibers. There's not a problem with fibers.
What's that?
Remember I told you it have to be threads. Unless you mix the wool and linen together and make it into something.
So why did they make such a fuss about Ugg boots?
Wait. I haven't heard the whole story.
Oh.
Right now,
I got a pair of them.
you have to have some lunch, right? I'm
Well,
gonna
thank
get
you. For me to wear.
Okay, so here's the problem with Uggs.
That's all.
You
What? I
see
got the
this,
pair.
there's a, I'm gonna pass this around. You see this little piece on the side here? This little piece on the side here, right?
Right.
It's not a piping, it's what stitches the boot together.
It's not piping.
This contains some linen. Okay, some linen. Okay? It's mostly rainy and I think a polyester. Something like that. Now, Is everybody familiar with the concept of bittul barov?
Little Barov. Yeah, there's not too much in there, so it's not such a terrible thing.
It's not a thing at all,
Oh, there you go.
right?
Not a
So
problem.
it turns out there's a small amount of linen in here.
Yeah.
There's some other fibers. So this
You can overlook.
doesn't have a din of being linen.
Thank God.
Okay.
So why is that
Make
different to the
such a big
5
deal out of it.
every 5th strand in the
Because
in the
that was
pants?
a chut. That's
Ah,
a full chut. It's not a
Chut
fiber.
bond.
It's a chut.
Hmm.
This is a chutim, right, that are mixed.
Right.
Right.
So once you mix it into a thread, right, you can have buttle. It could be buttle in there, right? Does everybody follow what I'm saying? Am I confusing everybody? No?
More or less.
Okay, do you want me to explain it one more
No,
time?
I
I'd be
just
happy
forgot
to.
what the hood was.
A chut is a thread.
It's a
That's
thread.
right.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all.
A chut is a thread. If you have a thread that has mamashis, it has physicality to it. What's mamashis? Physicality? Whatever. It's a real item. But fibers, that's not an item at all. Here's the interesting thing.
Oh.
So they sent me this boot because I get a lot of shilas from all over the world on this. So you see these fibers also down here, right? This is all wool.
Yeah.
Okay, so looks like it's just a bunch of fibers. So that if you had this and this was really linen and stitched to it, it wouldn't be a problem. But I dug deep, and then the person said, "Oh, the boot didn't belong to me. That I sent you." I said, "It's too late now." But they said, "Okay, whatever." I get a lot of this stuff. You have to get to the end. Sometimes you have to take things apart. As it turns out, this is actually like a carpet. A carpet. Let me explain to you how a carpet's made. Let me see. Do you have a? Okay, let me see.
Let's cut a piece out of this carpet, it's okay.
What they do is, let me see if I can diagram this for you. A carpet is made on a grid
Yeah.
like this.
A Persian carpet, bro.
It's made on a grid. It might all be, let's say it could all be cotton or polyester, whatever it is. In Persian rugs, it's a problem because this is made out of linen many times. In old Persian. Okay, then what they do is they take a thread.
Yeah.
Okay, and what they do is they lay the thread, let's say, across right here. And what they do is they poke it through. So you end up with a loop. So you get a loop here, and then a loop here, and a loop here, and a loop here, and a loop here. Does everybody follow?
They're loopy.
Yes. And then what they'll do is they do that through, they have a machine that pushes it through, okay? And then what they do is they cut it off, they shave it off at the top, okay? That's exactly what happened with this Ugg boot. This is made like a little carpet. So you see here, you can see that this is like almost like a carpet here, and they pushed it through to make it. When they did that, right, and then they shaved it off. When they did that, this part here has a thread. The bottom part in here is a thread. So this is really wool thread, and if it had been attached to real linen, it would be a problem. Now, I have looked at now probably about 3 dozen Uggs. Okay, now let me just qualify. Uggs for maybe 5-10 years ago did have wool and linen in them, okay? But recently there's all these Uggs brands and sub-brands. I've never found a problem. I have about 10 or more guys who I've trained in Shatnes. I contacted every one of them. Not of all of them, not one of them has found wool and linen together in a combination that would be Shatnes.
But do you have to have them checked if you buy a pair of Ugg boots?
That's a question for the rabbi. Okay.
It's a rabbi.
Yeah, Rabbi.
Okay. So
Why do you think I brought in the experts?
So the Bezdin, the 3 of the Bezdins I work with have said no. They wrote a letter to that effect because we have not found it, right? And
So there's no chazaka that it has it in, and it's...
right.
Can't that be tested at...
As a friend of mine in the Shatnes business says, the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't give us mitzvahs to make us go crazy, right? Yes, exactly.
There you go.
So we have to have a little sample when we're in life, I think. Okay, maybe I took your pedestal here and gave
No.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
in a place like Uggs, I don't know how many millions of pairs they make a year, whatever. Doesn't it behoove our organizations
Let
to
us know.
have a representative in there to check it out once in a while?
You have a mashkiach at a
You know,
clothes
yeah.
factory.
There you go. New profession here.
You know,
You want that, John?
I mean, if it's a concern,
it might be. The problem is with many of these companies, they manufacture all over the world.
yeah,
Okay? And just to give let me tell you how garments are made.
forget
okay?
China.
Because this is an interesting thing. What happens is that companies, even in the old days, they use a people called jobbers. Okay, a jobber, you come and you say, look, I need 1,000 yards of this material, and I want it to be, let's say, wool, and I want it to be this color, and I want it to be this, whatever the requirements are. And what he does is he has his contacts all around the world, and he will then go find you that material.
Converters.
Yeah.
The converter of.
Yeah, and he will also find you.
Next week.
He will also find you the shoulder pads, and he'll find you the tapes, and he'll find you the linings, and he'll find you
That's
all
a
that.
job.
And sometimes if you're making a lot of suits, if you could save 10 cents, or it's a lot of money, on these. So
Fractions.
that's the way they're made. So constantly the material, where they're getting it from, and the quality of the material and whatnot changes a lot in these factories. So it's very hard to control it. So they would have to hire somebody full time. And I've asked various companies, none of them have wanted to go quite that far.
Okay. I understand it. And it's fractions of pennies sometimes that they try
Sometimes
to
it's
say.
fractions of
It's
pennies.
unbelievable.
So did I answer your question?
Yeah.
So any suits made out of materials so what you're saying is every suit, no matter what it's made out of, needs to be checked, or every jacket, because they could have Shatnes
Over
in.
$1,000.
So I would say in men's and women's clothing, yes, more so for men because it has more construction in it. It has, the shoulder pads are usually full. Women's suits, like here, in many women's suits, you have this type of thing.
No collars.
Well, they
In the
They sometimes will have
suits, always
collars,
have
it'll-
collars.
They do
Maybe
have
the
shoulder
kids, but not the
pads.
ladies.
so I wanted to
And
show you
tailored
the
suits.
shoulder pads in here. Let's see if I can.
Very thin.
That's your child.
They're used for shaping
I
more
think
than.
I gotta come in the other way.
And what about if you have a woolen sweater? Do you have to worry that they've?
See, here's a typical shoulder pad that's in a women's.
Rubber.
You might see. So this is only like some foam or things
Yeah.
like that. So it's less problematic. Where you also find problems is in sweaters.
Yeah?
Okay, a lot of
Scottish
sweaters
sweaters?
have issues. Well, because they have there are ones that have ramie. When you have ramie, it's also a bass fiber. It looks a lot like linen, and a lot of times places that make it also may produce linen. You can get the two mixed, or they mislabel it or whatever. So that a problem. The other problem you have in sweaters is that when they go to do the construction, they have two pieces they're going to put together. Let's say the side seam. What they do is they'll move the material together. They use a basting thread. A basting thread is just a thread that just holds it in place, and they come over and stitch it. And when they're done, they pull out that basting thread. Well, sometimes that basting thread is linen, or has a majority of linen in it, or sometimes it's even ramie or whatever, which is when the Shatnes problem. And when they go to pull it out, they leave a little bit of the thread there, and then you can have a problem.
Even the Scottish sweaters that they make out of wool from Scotland.
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Oy vey.
But it's rare, so,
Yeah.
Okay, so
okay, are we,
Oh,
I'll entertain questions unless anybody has anything,
okay, so we'll conclude the formal part of the shiur. Thank you very much to Rabbi Goodman, and those who want to leave can leave.
Very nice.
Very informative, and we'll have to give you back all your various different artifacts. So thank you, and Yasher Koyach.
and if anybody has
Absolutely,
questions
yeah.
or wants something tested, I'll be glad to do that.